Hello and welcome back to the Not the Old Firm YouTube channel. My name is Ben Banks. Back to look on an action-packed Premiership weekend. I don't think it has ever been quiet in Scottish football's top flight this season. I don't think we've actually had a weekend where it's been nice and simple to look through just on the football and look at all the pretty things that happen. There's always controversy somewhere, and that was the case. This week you'll hear from different managers who are thinking about chucking it, managers who have blasted the SFA. We've got all sorts going on this week, as well as our opinion and analysis on it. James, how did you view the weekend's action?
In terms of the actual football, aye, perfectly reasonable. It's the off-field stuff that's been nothing short of an absolute shambles. But I'm sure I'll get on my soapbox about that shortly.
Yeah, looking at the table, Rangers at the top, Celtic in second, Aberdeen at third, Hibs fourth, Dundee United fifth, Kilmarnock sixth. That makes up the top six. It's fairly tight between sort of fifth and ninth in the table, only 7 points separating that. The bottom six made up of Motherwell, St Johnstone, Ross County, Livingston, St Mirren and Hamilton. A bit cut adrift there at the bottom. They are 5 points from safety, albeit they do have a couple of games in hand on Livingston. And some of the results over the weekend, we've seen Dundee United beat Hamilton 2-1. A missed penalty at the end for them goes a begging for Accies. Hibs drawn 2 each with Celtic. That on the face of it looks like a very good result for Hibs, but they did throw away 2 late goals, so perhaps
Hibs did.
Well, I didn't want to say it, but perhaps a missed opportunity for them. Motherwell won, St Johnstone won in Perth. Probably the most St Johnstone Motherwell game I have ever watched. Both sides, probably a draw was fair if I was going to edge it to someone. St Johnstone had the better of the chances late on. And Kilmarnock as well, 3-1 winners. They were over Ross County, despite playing with 10 men from the 8th minute. Crazy result there. So well played Alex Dyer on his team, as well as that St Mirren beating the Livingston 1-0, a much needed win for Jim Goodwin's side there first since August. And then today, as we record this on the Sunday night, Aberdeen beaten 4-0 by Rangers on a day where Aberdeen, as we'll get on to speak about, affected by COVID problems out with their camp, which is, I can only imagine, very, very frustrating for just about everyone involved at Aberdeen. We'll go through these games chronologically. We'll start with Dundee United Hamilton. Dundee United, a much needed win for them as well. I mean, for all the critics they've had in recent weeks, they are 5th in the table. They're sitting there comfortable-ish. But it's Hamilton really again that is the talking point of this. The criticism gets louder and louder, and not just Brian Rice at the club, but all aspects of the club are really, it's not a positive atmosphere around Hamilton just now, sadly.
No, it's not. I'll be fair, I've seen some comments that people attached to Hamilton which probably haven't helped that, if I'm honest. And, you know, it's one of these things where, for me, like, Brian Rice has come out and he's been quite bullish at times, which hasn't helped matters. Although, to give him his due, he did sit down with fans and speak to supporters after they got thumped at Ibrox. But you just got the feeling that everything at Hamilton's just firefighting just now.
It's everything that could go wrong is going wrong. And now, I said in the preview to this weekend, I would not have been at all surprised if Accies went up to Tannadice and won 1-0. Because this is the type of game Accies tend to win, just in terms of everything's against them. Everybody writes them off and then they go and win. And it looked that way. They were 1-0 up, they were leading, and then Nicky Clark gets a couple and they miss a penalty late on. And for me, even though they've been beaten by lower league teams, even though they've been thumped 8-0 off Rangers, I think this one is probably, if I was an Accies fan, would be the hardest one to take, because it just feels like no matter what they do, it's just not happening for them now.
Listening to Brian Rice speak after that game, you really got the sense that it doesn't matter what they do, everything just goes the wrong way for them just now. And you can't help feel for people like Chipper and some of the players there, but I've been saying for a while now that it's getting very, very close to the point where something has to change at Hamilton. And another defeat or two. And they have to, or they're going to relegate themselves. It's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their fixtures between now and January 2nd, they play Motherwell in the next Lanarkshire derby. They've got 6 of their games are at home, a slight advantage they are going to play Aberdeen, Hibs, Celtic. There's a couple of big ones in there as well. The one against Livingston a couple of days before Christmas is a massive one, given how Livingston have been faring, and we'll hear from them shortly. So Ross County away is another one that's going to be massive for them. But overall, they are in desperate need of just some sort of positive news, because it has been a tough wee while for them. Hibs Celtic, Hibs 2-0 up in that one. Jamie Murphy, Kevin Nisbet scored, and then obviously sort of threw it away a wee bit at the end.
A wee bit?
Wee bit.
No, that's no throwing it away a wee bit. That was a catastrophic choke. Like the Heimlich wouldn't have saved Hibs yesterday. That was terrible, mate. Like, so bad. To be sitting 2-0 up at home, and regardless of it being against either half of the Old Firm, it doesn't matter. Being 2-0 up at home with what, 20 minutes to go?
They were the first if I look here, it was on the 79th minute.
So 11 minutes to go when Celtic scored their first.
And at that point in the game, now I didn't watch the game, I've seen some highlights, but from what I've read of comments and stuff from online from both managers, Hibs were completely on top till that point. They made a couple of changes to try and shore it up. They gave away a penalty, which was, I think, debated again. But regardless, it was away. Edouard scored, and then the full game flipped, and then it was backs to the wall job for 10 minutes. Almost like if that penalty hadn't been given, they'd probably go on and win it, because by all accounts, they were very comfortable in that game. But obviously, it's an odd one. You'd have probably taken a point before the game if you're Hibs, but given the circumstances, you're probably disappointed at that point.
No, I completely agree. I've been up 2-0 with so little of the game left, and to come away with a point, it must be a right kick in the gut for him. But I think Jack Ross needs to kind of have some questions about his squad, because there's a reason why Hibs have got this reputation for Hibs now. And it goes back before Jack Ross, to be fair. It's not as if it's just a new problem that they've come across. They do have a habit of bottling it in bigger games. And it came right back to the 4 yesterday. And it's quite a shame, because you've got guys like Jamie Murphy, who's had quite a difficult start to the season. Played well yesterday, got his first goal. Kevin Nisbet scoring again. So there are positives to take for Hibs. But I think they're all undone by that final 11, 12 minutes.
Ross County, with the next 3 games, we all had reports that we'll start hearing from managers just now. Come on, at Ross County was one we were at. We heard from Alex Dyer at the end of that one. A 3-1 victory for them. Stuart Finlay sent off after 8 minutes, but they came back. Still won very comfortably against a really poor Ross County side in the day. I don't think Stuart Kettlewell was too happy at the end of it at that one. But obviously, contrast emotions for Alex Dyer, who was delighted with his side at full time.
Yeah, excellent win, good performance, down to 10 men. You know, the lads showed what they're about, good team spirit, worked hard for each other, and like I said, great performance. Definitely. I think it was 8 minutes, was it? Something like that. But it showed what we got. You know, Gary Dicker just slips back into centre half for the first half, and then I made the change at half time. Wanted to bring Xeno on and put Gary back into midfield, and I had to take Brophy off, which is a hard thing to do because he was playing well, scored his goal, and I didn't really want to take him off, but for the benefit of the team, I thought it was the best thing to do.
Livingston St Mirren, another one, and very interesting comments at the end of this. We're going to let you hear from Jim Goodwin, and then we'll let you hear from Livingston manager Gary Holt. Jim Goodwin obviously delighted with his St Mirren side result, a 1-0 win for them. Jake Doyle-Hayes getting his first goal since moving to the club, but Gary Holt left with questions about his own future at the end of that as he pondered whether he's taken this Livy side as far as he can.
You know, we've been on a poor run of form in the league, but you know, since all of the COVID shenanigans and the lockdown and everything, that's us came back out with a good draw against Dundee United at home, and obviously 3 points here today. So hopefully we can continue in that vein. It wasn't a fantastic game, it never is here. You know, the pitch doesn't allow it, and obviously Livingston don't allow it either, because they're fantastic at what they do in terms of their energy and their application, and you know they're going to be up and at you and in your face, and they don't allow opposition players a great deal of time on the ball. So we had to kind of match them with that today, and I felt we'd done it particularly well. You know, I don't think there was a great deal between the two teams, if I'm being honest, but you know, probably being biased, I will say we slightly edged it.
being honest, if it was 0-0 at the end of the game, you'd have said it was probably justified. We had the better chances first half. The keeper's not decided to make the whole game. We come in and losing the game 1-0. I sound like a broken record. It's happening too often. We're 15 games in, and I can count numerous times that this story's happened and repeated itself. So I'll have to have a good look at myself, see what I'm doing right, things I'm doing right. Are the players buying into that? And if we're not, then I'll have a look at myself and what I'm going to do. It is, but we had enough chances in the first half to score. We're not taking our chances, and if you don't take a chance, you're going to lose a goal or a chance in the game. And that wasn't even really a chance. It was a second phase, and it was too easy. We don't seem to get that. But as I said, it's a broken record. I'm standing here in front of you guys and ladies and saying the same things. Played really well, worked really hard, created chances. Did we take them? No, we didn't. And then you get sucker punched with a goal, because I don't think St Mirren offered too much an attacking threat to go and hurt us, apart from later on when we were trying to chase the game. But as I said, I've stood here week after week at the moment and saying the same things. No, well, at the end of the day, we're 15 games and we're not winning enough points in the bag, so I have to have a decision whether am I affecting the players? Have they get tired of me? You know what I mean? It happens. At the end of the day, you do move on. So if things aren't going the right way, you look at yourself first and foremost. I'll analyse it, I'll analyse the players, I'll analyse what I've done. I'll go home tonight and did I do my best? Did I pick the right team? Did I get the tactics right? And if it's the same record over and over, someone's got to change.
Now, it's not very often, I don't think, you get these sort of comments now from managers, just with the way the way clubs are in the modern world. They don't really give a lot away. I don't know, and I think he does say at the end of that interview, Gary Holt, that he was perhaps a wee bit emotional. Perhaps now, when he sits down around this time, he'll think about it differently. But that gives you an insight, I think, into sort of how he's feeling and how frustrated he is with Livingston's start to the season.
For me, that's something that a manager should never be saying in public. Regardless of whether he's thinking it or not, he's just put a huge target on his back now. And regardless of now whether he thinks that, he might have woken up this morning and thought, no, I can do this job for another 10 years. But by putting that out there, he's immediately just kind of put a crosshairs there, and his players will start doubting him. And that's a really big thing. If he's sitting wondering to himself, have I taken this side as far as I can go? That feeds back to his players, and his players will start thinking, well, has he taken us as far as we can go? Is it the manager's fault that we're no winning games, that we're dropping silly points, and that we're no punching it the same way we were punching this time last season? So he should know a bit better. It's not as if he's not been around the game long enough. You know, he's a very experienced coach. He's a hell of a long career as a player. So it's not some guy that's wet behind the ears. And it strikes me as the one that, regardless of what his feelings are, like ultimately over his long-term job prospects, pardon me, I think it's going to be a line that he's sitting there thinking, I shouldn't have said that yesterday.
Maybe. I think for Livingston, that's been a bit of a worry for their fans, is the lack of home form that was well built up, that Livingston was arguably the hardest place to go in the league outside of Celtic and Rangers, given how horrible it is. I don't think, regardless of even though the results have changed for many teams at West Lothian this season, the games itself, the conditions you're usually playing in are not great. But you have seen Motherwell, St Mirren, Hamilton, just a couple of the clubs that have went there this season and
thrashed them there as well, remember?
Hamilton, I think Hamilton was an odd one. They sort of sneaked it at the end despite having a barrage of chances, I'm pretty sure. But the problem is they saw it in Kilmarnock as well, were another team that beat them there. They haven't got the sort of results required against that's twice now they've been beat off St Mirren, a team that's going to be round about them at the bottom. I think it's they sort of games. They're not sort of winning. They need to get back to being Livingston. Gary Holt deserves a bit of credit for trying to get them to play a wee bit. But
absolutely. I mean, one thing I would very much say in Gary's defence, I said this to you yesterday on Twitter, was that, I mean, he performed miracles last season at Livingston, but you can't keep performing miracles or it just becomes the norm. And I think the problem is that, certainly some Livingston fans, don't know about the staff. I don't think it's the staff necessarily think it. But I do think that given how well they've done in recent seasons, there's this kind of assumption that, well, at the worst, we are a mid-table, top half of the bottom six, bottom half of the top six table. When in reality, Livingston are, if not the poorest team in the division, they're probably the second, behind Hamilton. They are that team who almost everyone would realistically have said that they're going to be relegation candidates this season. I don't think anybody expect them to kind of carry on what they've done last year. And I just think it's almost as if his own success is kind of hurting them. And it happened to Livingston first time around when they come up to the Premiership. You'll not remember that. When Livy came up last time, I'm sure they finished. It was your third or fourth they finished in their first season in the Premiership, and then it all went to shit. So it's kind of has to repeat itself a little bit here.
I think overall, from what I've seen online, things like that, the fans, even though it hasn't been going great, have got a lot of respect for him. Well, he's done, and I think a lot of fans do back him to be the man to sort of turn it around. He's turned around the club in a lot worse circumstances. So I think he'll be all right, Gary Holt. It'll be interesting to see sort of what their reaction is in the League Cup. They've obviously got I don't want to say an easier time. Mark Kerr's Ayr United team won't just turn up and roll over, but it'll be interesting to see the sort of reaction from that. I was at St Johnstone Motherwell was the game I was at. Just a really bizarre game, injuries, and then the game was just a bit odd. But overall, I mean, from a Motherwell point of view at least, the game wasn't the main talking point at the end of that one. Turned up at kick-off to find that Alan Campbell and Barry Maguire were nowhere near the squad, despite speaking to Alan Campbell 24 hours previous about how he was looking forward to being involved in the game. He had to self-isolate as a part of the Scotland under-21's COVID-19 outbreak, where I think a couple of coaches had tested positive last weekend. The players weren't retested before they flew back to Greece. Motherwell had to go to a hotel and test their players themselves. The SFA didn't do it. Motherwell went and did it themselves.
This is a detail I wasn't aware of.
Well, I will let you hear Stephen Robinson's interview, and let's just say the Motherwell manager wasn't happy about the situation, because now he's missing two key players, one for the game yesterday against St Johnstone, and now the League Cup last 16 game.
Obviously not ideal, probably that's an understatement, with me and the team and ready to go, but we got told I got a phone call around about 11 o'clock from the chief executive to tell me the two boys, Alan and Barry, couldn't play, and again a double punishment that they can't play next week. So it's it's a big blow, but isn't it? The boys, we're not going to use that as an excuse maybe for the performance. We're happy to get out with a point in the end with the disruption, but we can be better than what we played tonight. I mean, I got a phone call from the chief executive last night at 10 o'clock to say that there's a potential that some of the under-21 players have tested positive and there might be a track and trace issue, but it wasn't until 11 o'clock that I got told that the boys couldn't play. So not ideal. I know that other clubs found out early in the day on Friday after they tested, and so the communication was poor, really, really poor. It's got to be better than that when you go into a league performance environment, allegedly. We got a positive test. We closed the club down for 2 days at the detriment of our training schedule because we only had 1 day preparation before Livingston. But the health and safety of everybody was paramount. So although it might not be government protocols, there's a common sense approach here. So I'm being told that a staff member tested positive, then the players weren't retested before they flew in 2 flights in close environments, and they haven't broke any kind of protocols. That's not the question here. It's just a common sense of going above and beyond to make sure everybody's right. But not my problem if it's not affecting Motherwell, but it is. It's affected us badly today. Alan Campbell, arguably my best player. 2 out of the 3 of my midfielders have started the last 3 games missing. And I think Aberdeen are heavily affected by numbers as well. The Livingston goalkeeper, I believe, as well. I'm not sure of the other one, so I'm not missing anybody out there on purpose. But I think it can be done better. And I don't usually try and jump with people because this is a situation that is hard and we all make mistakes. But common sense wasn't used, and the communication was a joke.
Okay, so basically, obviously Stephen Robinson, as you heard, not very happy, calling the communication a joke, quite literally. Being around, obviously, some of the staff at Mull as well, let's just say, I don't think Mull as a club are very happy.
Come on, Ben, go and just drop the line that you said in Twitter to me. Come on, because I thought and it might take the perception of I'm shit-stirring here, but it's not, because I do think it absolutely sums up like just how big a thing this is.
What was I said to you on Twitter?
There's a nuke coming.
Yeah. I'll not reveal who was saying stuff, but obviously in these enclosed stadiums you hear a lot of conversations. There was a lot of conversations going back and forth between different clubs yesterday that were affected by that, and it didn't sound great, to be honest. And I think the problem is that because this is very much blood on the SFA's hands, it's not as if it's a club problem or that. The SFA have been the ones to hand out fines, to hand out punishments to clubs. Who's going to fine the SFA? Because clearly this is their wrongdoing. Mull were told at 11:30 yesterday, before they went to Perth, that their players had to self-isolate. Now, I don't know this for a fact, but I would not be surprised if Alan Campbell and Barry Maguire were sitting on the bus, ready to go to Perth. It's not with possibility. And Stephen Robinson saying that basically when the players never get tested, the under-21s players, when they found out about the positive test within the coaching staff, they flew out to Greece without any further tests. And then they came back from Greece in the early hours of Wednesday morning. And Alan Campbell and Barry Maguire, as well as Declan Gallagher and Stephen O'Donnell, when they came back from senior Scotland duty, they all stayed in a separate hotel rooms, etc. at Glasgow Airport. And Mull's COVID officer had to go out to Glasgow Airport and test them all individually. The SFA didn't do it. Mull paid for the tests, as far as I believe. So it's a credit to Mull, I suppose, because it just shows you how proactive they have been in dealing with this. A lot of other clubs, not do I point any fingers, but perhaps other clubs wouldn't have went to those extents. Mull have been very ultra safe. Stephen Robinson is a complete cleanophobe. Don't know the word for it, but germaphobe, whatever you want to call it. Is hand sanitizers everywhere. You're not allowed. If he sees you not sanitizing your hands, then he pulls you up for it.
Good.
It's obviously when they're doing all of that, when they're paying their players to be with the Scotland under-21s, of course they want their players to be playing on that stage. But I mean, it comes at a serious risk because now they're without two really key players in midfield for the next couple of games.
Any more games to go over before I go off on one here?
How many games have we got? Well, Rangers Aberdeen's another one, but before we go on to that, hear from St Johnstone manager Callum Davidson, who was not without injury worries yesterday. Craig Conley suffering a broken nose during the game, and an ambulance had to pick up Murray Davidson at full time after he landed really awkwardly on his shoulder, took a really bad one. And Callum Davidson provided an update on the two of them at full time.
I think he fell awkwardly, so can't say much more than he's just going to get assessed. He's going to get checked out, make sure he's okay.
Dislocated shoulder, is it?
No, I think it's more just fell awkwardly on the shoulder sort of area, so I'll give him just quality precautions to make sure he's okay. Yeah, so he's broke his nose as well, so it was zigzag. So it's one of those you get, they come along, obviously you get one, you get another, so hopefully they're both okay. Thoughts of the game? I thought we started brightly. I thought we got good areas. I thought we pressed extremely well from the middle of the pitch, and I think decision making when we got there, we had opportunities to put them under more pressure. Then conceded off a counter attack after that, and then from then on I thought we were the ones obviously trying to win the game, pushing bodies forward, but again we get the penalty, and then for me we probably just didn't have enough quality in the final third.
Rangers Aberdeen's the other one should probably mention as well, just for because before James goes off on one, that Livingston goalkeeper Robbie McCrory was another one to test positive from the Scotland under-21s set up. David Turnbull of Celtic the other, but Aberdeen have been affected by it as well because Ross McCrory has tested positive for it again. I believe he
second time. Yeah, he tested positive back in March.
Probably the first Scottish football players to actually be publicly confirmed as a positive case, and Lewis Ferguson and Conor McLennan also having to self-isolate. Aberdeen, like Mull, told at the very last minute yesterday at 11 o'clock, so Aberdeen had slightly more time to prepare for it, but they had to push back training. they never got into Glasgow until much later than they would have yesterday, and they ended up having to play a left back and a CDM that's not really match fit. And that showed in the game. Rangers won 4-0. Aberdeen clearly affected by the sort of late COVID disruptions. They didn't have really a midfield because Ross McCrory would have been out of the game anyway because Rangers are his parent club. But Lewis Ferguson, obviously, a huge miss. So I'll let you go off in your week.
I'll quickly do the Aberdeen Motherwell stuff before I go off on one. But no, I think Aberdeen, regardless of Ferguson and whatnot, but now Aberdeen were on to hiding to nothing this afternoon. Lewis Ferguson's not that good a player that he would have made that big a difference in that game today. Aberdeen didn't lay a glove on Rangers. I mean, defensively, they were pretty full strength defensively. With Andy Considine side at left back, and he's played a lot in the season at left back. But Aberdeen were hopeless, utterly hopeless at Ibrox. Derek McInnes has come out with some nonsense about them having a good record at Ibrox, which I never understood. I think this was the 4th game in the spin. They've went to Ibrox and failed to score. I don't know where this good record comes from. But also moaning about penalties. I think Aberdeen were lucky not to give away a stone waller in the first half and got one in the second against them that admittedly was softer. But, if it's only really soft when you compare it to the one that Rangers didn't get.
Right, well, that's all we've got sort of time for on this review. We'll look at the COVID stuff. We've took a short editing break and decided that it would be best if we have an episode dedicated to the sort of future of international football. So we're not stuck here for 2 to 3 hours with James ranting and raving. Because I'd quite like to get to my bed at some point tonight. So we'll leave that for another video, and you'll be able to see that during the week, as well as we'll have an interesting discussion later in the week. We never had an exclusive interview this week because we've been putting together things behind the scenes that you'll get to see in the coming weeks and months, as well as we've got a bit more of an exciting type of interview at the weekend, a bit different from anything we've done on the YouTube channel so far. So do keep an eye out for that one later in the week. League Cup action. So, the Premiership has been so stop-start this season. It's off for another week. And then clubs get to fit in 9 or 10 fixtures in December. Whoever thought of that? Novel idea. But it'll be League Cup action for us next weekend, the last 16. We will be at a couple of games over the weekend. And what will be an exciting weekend, as always, as teams look for last 8 progression. That's all we've got time for after all the PR stuff. Hopefully nobody else gets COVID. Hopefully some sort of issue is resolved with under 21s and we can all go back to happy families within Scottish football. Somehow, I doubt it. But do hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, read our content at notoldfirm.com and like us on Twitter. And until next time, take it easy.